Welcome back. Jasmine and Larry are with us, and I'm delighted to say that we're joined by Age UK Support Officer David Broome, as we're going to be discussing social care and finding out what help is available to those who might be struggling with it. If this is something you have experience of or you're concerned about and need some advice, then please do give us a call now. The number is 0207 862 2222. Jasmine, you've had quite a lot of personal experience with this. Can you talk through what involvement you've had with the care system?
Yeah, I tell you what's been fascinating. No one warns us when we're younger. As we grow up, they say you'll try and get a mortgage, you might want to get a car, you'll get married, and hopefully you might want some children. But no one says that most people at some point in their lives will care for an elderly person or another person in their family. So when it suddenly happens and you're an adult, you go, OK, well, I'll be supported. There's council care, there's a system. I've been paying my council tax for years, like the rest of my family, and it says adult social care for the extra part, and you assume that when it comes to your turn that your parent will be looked after. And so the struggle that I have had this last 3 years, as soon as my mum's 91 now, so you'd think she'd be benefiting or entitled to some adult social care. The first time I called up, they said to me, we've got a 2-year waiting list, so we can't get you occupational therapy. Then when I finally, look, not every elderly person has a mouthy advocate like me as their daughter, right? I emailed our local MP, they looped in our social services. Not every elderly person has someone fighting for them. And it has been a minefield. So they tell you that they'll come out and they'll do means testing assessments to see whether they can fit adaptations in the home or whether you're entitled to any care. And then, of course, if you have more than £23,000 savings in your bank, you're not entitled to care, you have to pay for it. So there are all these loopholes, but people don't, you'll know, they don't tell you what you're accessible to. So, for example, I bought my mum a fold-up wheelchair on Amazon, and then the GP went, oh, we could have got you one and it would have been free and it would have been new. And I was like, well, why didn't you tell me? And then I had adaptations done, and then someone said, oh, the council should pay for that. And I was like, well, why didn't you tell me? So there's all these things that are available for elderly people to be supported and cared for, but we're not being told about them. I didn't know my mum could have home visits for Specsavers until the adverts for Specsavers, but I didn't know that the GP would come and do blood tests. And then I had to ask, and they went, oh, yeah. And I was like, well, why are you making me struggle with her and take days off work? And when you're trying to juggle a full-time job and caring for an elderly parent, it's horrific. But I have come through the system, and I do long posts on Facebook for my friends and family and say, if you're going through this too, here are my tips. And suddenly everyone in their 40s and 50s comes out and goes, yes, we're all going through this, but it's the last taboo. We don't speak about it enough anymore.
Yeah, well, David, you've got lots of tips coming up for us shortly about how you can sort of navigate this quite difficult system at times. Larry, you also have a mum.
Yeah, very similar story. My mother's 92 and she's now in a care home in a specialist dementia unit. And because she owns her own home, I didn't even bother go to the council. I just thought, well, I'm just going to assume that until all of that money is gone, because the house has to be sold, there will be no help. We looked at home care, private home care, but it didn't seem to, it was more expensive than the care home, and the care home was at least £1,500 a week. So I think I just felt that, I always knew there'd be no inheritance, because now that the government keep talking about, oh, you won't have to sell your house. Yes, you do. You have to sell everything. You have to sell, until she's down to 14.5 grand, I think. And then, and we're very fortunate that she can afford to pay for that. We're very fortunate. But there is the fear coming. What happens when the money runs out? Yeah. The kind of Kate Garraway situation. What do you do then? Do we then have to fight like you with the council? I've no idea. So that's why we have an expert here.
Yes, let's get some expert advice from David. OK, let's go right back to the beginning. If someone's just starting off on this journey, either for themselves or for a loved one, what would be their first point of call?
Yeah, as we've been talking about, the main source of social care help is from your local council.
Right.
So the first thing that we always advise people to do is to contact your local council and ask for a needs assessment. That's right at the start of the process. The council have to come along, look at your needs, look at the social care services that you might need to live more independently. You might need a care home, it might be care at home. But the needs assessment is right at the start of the process.
And then from there, you start to work out what you can get, through the government and what you may have to fund privately.
Yes, so the thing to explain is that in most situations, help with the cost of care services like a care home or care at home is means tested, which means they'll look at your savings, other forms of capital.
The elderly person's savings, not the family
Absolutely,
savings.
that's really important. I'm glad you said that, because sometimes there's a perception that it's all your family saving or your partner as well. It's just the individual that needs to care. They'd look at your capital, look at your income, and look at whether or not you're entitled to help pay for the services the council have assessed you as needing.
But why is there such a disparity between England, Scotland and Wales? So here, the threshold is £23,000. In Scotland, it's £30,000, and in Wales, it's £50,000. That seems a bit unfair.
Yeah, social care is a devolved area of policy. So as you're saying, in Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, they have a different system than we do in England. So there are some differences there. I think the important thing to emphasise is Age UK is the charity for England. We can give advice about that, but people can contact Age NI, Age Scotland, Age Cymru for advice about how the system differs in those nations. But there are some differences, yeah, it's right.
Okay, so you go to your council, you find out whether you're entitled to, anything through sort of the government. Yeah. Jasmine was hinting at there that it sort of feels like this labyrinth that you have to navigate, and some things are free and you didn't realise until afterwards. Yeah. Have you got any advice on how people might be able to sort of untangle that? Yeah,
it's a real minefield, and your experience is quite common in yours as well. You feel like you have to fight the system. People shouldn't have to do that. But in terms of working out how it all works and how you negotiate that, your council should be explaining how it all works. That doesn't always happen. People can approach us. We've got advice. We've got a helpline. People can call us and say, even if you're right at the start of the process, I don't know where to start, I don't know what to do, or you might have more detailed questions about how the individual means testing rules work.
Are there any council-run care homes which so for example, my mother is able to fund it because she owns her own home. If that wasn't the case, if somebody's watching and their relative is in rented accommodation, and is there? I mean, if there was a crisis, would there be a place available, or is it like the NHS where you end up waiting 2 years to see anybody?
Yeah, I think the first part of that is whether or not councils themselves own the care services that they assess people as needing. Most often these days, they're privately run or voluntarily or charitable run services, so they're usually not state-owned services.
Would they be better if they did come back to the state?
I think what I would say there is that whatever the care services are available in the local area, the local authority have got to assess you, make sure that whatever care they arrange for you, be it a private provider, charitable provider, or a service they run themselves, they've got to ensure that that's suitable for your individual need and circumstance.
While they're profit-making businesses, it does seem to be a conflict of interest. Because if it was like something that was state-owned, everybody would be equal and they would be on the same level of care. I feel like when it's a private care home, in there about profit, the levels, it's like education, isn't it? The levels are different when it's private.
Yeah, I understand where that question is coming from. I think what I would emphasise today, in terms of people who just want to find out how it all works, the thing to emphasise is get in contact with your council. They've got to assess you. There is a means test to see if you help with the cost. And then the services that they arrange for you, they've got duties towards ensuring that they are suitable for you. So I know there's a wider debate around social care services and who owns them and so on, but I think for people out there today, I think that's one of the
And if you're not happy with what the conclusion of that initial assessment is, or if you just generally have a complaint, is there a way of sort of feeding that back?
Yeah, exactly. It does depend upon whether or not the council arranged your care or you privately arranged it. If it's the council, they're ultimately responsible for ensuring those services work for you, they meet your needs and so forth. So if it's going wrong, it's not working out, the council should have a complaints procedure that you can use. They should be working with you to try and address the problems. If using a complaints procedure doesn't sort the problem out, there is an ombudsman, the local government and social care ombudsman, that's independent of all the local authorities. So if it really goes that far, they can look at your complaint. But hopefully most often people can address the problems with the local council themselves. If you privately arrange your own care, the care provider is required by the regulator, the Care Quality Commission, to have their own complaints procedure. Again, they've got to make sure that they're addressing all those complaints appropriately. But if that doesn't work things out, people arranging private care can also go to the Ombudsman that I mentioned.
Have you two been happy with the level of care your mother's?
Yes and no. I mean, I'm interested. There's been a lot in the news recently about councils not being able to afford care for children with special needs. We've got an ageing population. This is a ticking time bomb, isn't it? So, number one, our council is going to continue to fund care for older people, and is there a shortage of places? I mean, that would be my concern.
Yeah, I guess there's two things there. We know that councils are under a lot of financial pressure. That's the case, and we do know in some parts of the country there is a shortage of care services. So even if the council's done everything right, sometimes the services aren't there to meet people's needs. They're really serious problems, and that's why it's always been an issue for Age UK and always be one that we advocate for and campaign on to ensure that whoever you are, whatever your circumstances, you can get the care that you need when you need it.
Any of the political parties saying they've been talk for so long about how you won't have to sell your house, and then they go quiet for ages. Any of the parties
what they have to say when they
any
have
of the, because we remember the whole dementia tax thing. Are any of the parties saying, elect us and your elderly mother will not have to sell her home? Anybody saying that?
Yeah, I'm not aware that that's. But I think what we would always say in terms of that issue, it's a really difficult issue, quite emotive about your own home perhaps being included in the means test. The really important thing for people in that position is call us, find out when your property can be included in the means test to pay for your care and when it would actually be ignored. So I guess anybody listening to that part of our conversation, please come to us and have a chat and we can explain how it works.
And if people do want to find out more information, where's the best place for them to go?
People can go to our website, so that's ageuk.org.uk. We've got lots of information and advice on there. People can also call our helpline, so they can call up, speak to an advisor.
Real human being.
Real human being, that's
Not working
right.
a 4-day week at Age UK then.
And we've got trained advisors there who know about all the social care rules, so yeah.
And
Give us a call.
There are also lots of organisations out there like Admiral Nurses and people that will give you that extra information. You know, I've been in despair walking hospital corridors not knowing where to look next, and then an Admiral Nurse will come along and go, these are all the things you can get help for, this is what you're entitled to, and so do also look at those places.
OK, so pull upon those people that you're interacting with on
absolutely.
a regular
I mean, there are some very amazing people working in social care, and you meet some amazingly kind people, as well as all of the stresses you go through.
Well, thank you so much, David, for all that advice. Really, really helpful.